Langley. I'm from Citizen Outreach Coalition. Can you introduce yourself, please?
I am Harvey Kwiyani, Dr. Harvey Kwiyani. I teach at Liverpool Hope University. I teach African Theology, African Christianity. I come from Malawi, been in the UK for 7 years now. I also lead a charity called Missio Africanus that provides missions training to African Christians living in Britain.
Liverpool Hope University recently added African Religious Studies to its Department of Theology. Why was this necessary now?
We're living in a world today where Christianity has grown in Africa over the past 70 years. Christianity has grown quite significantly in Africa. As we speak today, Africa has more Christians than Europe. Africa has more Christians than any other continent. And that means that Africa has become quite important in the study of Christianity, in the study of theology. Even here in the UK, we do know that where churches are growing, it's mostly African churches that are growing. So this has become quite an important field of study. A lot of us want to understand what's happening, what's making African Christianity grow, both in Africa and here in the UK. A lot of us want to understand what Africans are thinking, how they're doing their theology. So it's become a very interesting field of study. Plus, of course, African Christians are looking for theological training. So it becomes quite an important area to a group of people to engage in the discipline of theology.
You mentioned before about the rise of African prophets. What exactly do you think has given this rise to African prophets?
I think one of the most important things that we need to understand about African Christianity is that it is shaped by the African culture. African culture that has always been quite interested in the spirit world. We do this, I read with my students things for about Chinua Achebe, just to introduce them to the African worldview, to help them understand that for Africans, life is not just this material things that we see today. There is the unseen world of spirits, right? That have been part of the African life for centuries. Now the prophets connect African Christianity with that understanding of the spirit world. The spirits heal, the spirits make rain happen, the spirits do all these things. The spirits help people enrich themselves, so to speak. And the prophets have managed to connect Christianity to this African worldview, or this African understanding of life that is quite big on the spirits. And that's what helps them gain traction and get the popularity that they have, the experience at the moment.
So the spirits that you're describing, is it a evil spirit or is it a good spirit?
Yes, the way we talk about spirits is that largely they are neutral and they can be used to do whatever the person trying to use them wants them to do, right? And so if somebody wants to harm another person, they can use the same spiritual power. They can send the same spirits, same curses, same spells to go and harm this person. But also, if they want to bless somebody, they can also engage the same spirits and go prosper or bless somebody else. So it's never really clear whether a spirit is evil or is good. It depends on what it's doing.
How will you describe the rapid growth of African Pentecostalism in Merseyside?
The parts of Christianity that are growing in the UK are mostly African. That's a given fact. We do know from research that, for instance, the city of London, on any given Sunday, over 60% of people who go to church are Black Africans or Africans from the West Indies. And Black people in London form only 14%. So you have 14% of the population accounting for 60-65% of church attendance. So that is clear, and it's happening nationwide. African churches, Black churches African Pentecostal Christians, African Pentecostal churches are on the rise in the UK. And so it doesn't surprise me that it's the case in Liverpool as well. Liverpool has, of course, a long history of migration. People coming from around the world really to live in Liverpool. Has a long history of actually slave trade. Black people found their way to Liverpool very, very long ago. So there is that. There is just the fact that many Africans are finding their way to come and live in Liverpool. Many of them Pentecostals. As a result, we see a growing number of African Pentecostal churches in the city.
What role does the church play in the life of an average African?
We do know that Africans are religious. A Kenyan professor, John Beatty, is famous for this quotation that says Africans are notoriously religious. And we do know that when Africans find their way to Europe, to the UK, they bring their religion with them. So even when they are here, Liverpool, Merseyside, religion still plays a very important role in their lives. The church becomes the place where, on the one hand, they are able to meet with friends and talk about home, or probably enjoy home food, probably able to speak their home languages, things that they often can't do in other spheres of life. But also, because they are religious already, the church becomes the religious hotspot, so to speak.
COVID-19 has had a bad effect on churches, to the point where some of the churches that said that they can cure people with miracles have been closed down. What's your opinion about this?
Yeah, I do joke with my students that the coronavirus has changed the way we preach. We always, and this is interesting because even the prophets that have been promising that they can cure everything, they are in quarantine now. They are all staying at home because, of course, coronavirus has had this effect on the church. Now, I do believe that Jesus heals, but I also believe that science is a gift from God for us. So, if Jesus is not healing you now, follow the science. Right? And so, if science is saying, stay in quarantine, stay in quarantine. For instance, if science is saying, wear your masks, not just for the sake of yourself, but for the people around you, do that. Right? God will heal, but you got to be responsible. You got to be careful as well.
Second generation African children, do you think they'll move away from religion?
I hope they don't. But the data that we're seeing in our research shows that they are finding it difficult to stay in their parents' churches. So it's common for young people, once they get out of their parents' homes, go to uni or move to a different city, they stop going to church altogether. So there is that. We are seeing that. That's a trend that's growing. And part of the problem is really that most African Christians, African church leaders in the UK, were Christians in Africa before they came here. They, to use a church word, they were discipled in Africa before they came here. They learned how to live their Christian life in Africa. Most of them actually in schools, student Christian organizations in schools were quite influential in shaping, even until today, they are still quite influential in shaping African Christianity, in the shaping of African Christians. Our children growing up in the UK do not have that. So they lack the atmosphere that the parents had when they grew up in Africa. And I find that the parents don't know how to cover up for that space, for the lack of fellow young teenage Christian communities. That's always difficult for parents. So by the time they get to 18, 19, they're going to uni, church is no longer of interest. Many young people will complain and say, our parents dragged us to church when we were young, and we didn't want anything to do with church after leaving home. And that's common, it happens quite a lot. So my hope is that they will not leave church. And I think a greater part of dealing with that is just helping parents understand that they're not in Africa anymore, and they have to learn to do things differently to help communicate the faith to their children.
What are the other challenges that African Pentecostal churches survival faced?
Yeah, let's start with just the expression of Christianity as Pentecostals. Pentecostalism is not as popular in Europe as it is in Africa. People still think of it as suspicious. And so, while churches grow fast in Africa, here in Europe, here in the UK, here in the Merseyside, they don't grow that fast. It's a struggle. I know too many churches that can't grow beyond 20, and they can't really find any more Africans to invite to church anymore. So it just stays small for a long time, and it's a lot of pain involved in that. So there is that. There is just the general issue of black Christians in a white world, so to speak. They have to live with the effects of racism in the world that we live in. That I still think it's common. It's commonly accepted, commonly expected for white Christians to teach black Christians how to do the faith. It's a problem in most cases when black Christians try to disciple white Christians. And that affects the way African churches grow in Merseyside or in the UK. So they have to deal with the effects of racism. Of course, we can also add that many churches struggle to strike a balance between being there for their community on the one hand and being there for spiritual reasons on the other. Right? That somebody once joked and said the African pastor in the UK is a lawyer, is a counselor, is a financial advisor, is all these things, right? And that's always difficult for people to figure out how best do we do this, all these things that we need to do in the context of doing church. And that's a struggle for many churches.
Among pastors, hatred among pastors, striving among leaders, wickedness will be, fornication will be, adultery will be in the church.